Good morning, Chevra. It's great to be back, and once again, a special treat to have Rav Gerzi join us here in the Chabura. And I asked Rav Gerzi to come. We've mentioned throughout this chapter, as we're discussing about what type of financial lifestyle Hashem envisioned for His children, right? And as we've been going through, we've seen, and I've been having discussions with Rav Gerzi, giving his input into everything we're discussing here, where we find that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be comfortable. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to have what we need and more. And then we discussed about the sugya of wealth, right? We discussed ashiras, and we found that from the perspective of the Torah, it's an amazing thing. From the perspective of the Torah, we find tremendous amounts of praise and tzaddikim that were wealthy. But at the same time, when it comes to what we're actually asking for, when it comes to the tefillah, we see that in most of the tefillahs, we're not directly asking for ashiras. Most of the shonas that we find this lashon of asking that we should have berevach, right? That we shouldn't just have tzimtzum, we shouldn't just have what we need, but we should have more. But we do find in Chazal this reality of the fact that either we are davening for wealth, or if a person wants to become wealthy, we find different eitzos for it. So we find, right, the tefillah of Rav, right? Rav said this tefillah every single day, right? We say it in tefillah of Rosh Chodesh, right? We went through it, right? That we're asking for Oisher v'chavod, right? And we find different Mamar Chazal that speak about advice. It's like how to become
davening and how to bow.
Yeah, all these things. Like what direction to stand in, right? Honoring one's spouse, tzedakah, Rabbi. We had conversations, and we even have Lashonos ad kedei kach. We even have such Lashonos that we find in Chazal. Rotze yitasher. Somebody who wants to become wealthy, this is what he should do. So if we're finding this lashon, right, that if a person wants to be wealthy,
it's also interesting when you put all of them together. You have a lot of them. It's not just like, one little eitzah over here, one little eitzah over there. But when you start putting all of these eitzahs together throughout Shas, throughout the Midrashim, you can have a whole file full of eitzahs to have like ashiras, and you didn't even reach anything more than like Chazal.
Yeah, it's
Chazal.
To build a course.
We should do a little book of 85 ways. I think it's 86 Makoros.
How to become wealthy. Yeah. So we've Baruch Hashem, we've had the opportunity to be able to go through some of them, and try to understand them. So we find this, and it seems that the Torah is relating to the fact that you have this reality of a person who wants to become wealthy. Now, what we spoke about in the Chabur, and I told everyone that we're going to say this when Rabbi Gerzi comes, is that there is this reality we find in which, and this I've seen from conversations with real people. Rabbi Gerzi, you've met with many people like this, that if you speak with them from an honest place and from a real place, they have a ratzon. They have this ratzon. They have a desire, not just to have enough, not just to have a little bit more, but to become wealthy. And the question is that where is this desire rooted from? We find that Chazal speak about it. They say if a person wants to become wealthy, so then go do this and this. So the Torah is saying that there is such a desire. The question is, where is it rooted from? And what I told the Chevra back then is that it's an amazing thing that we find through the Svarim, we find through the teachings of the Torah, is that desire can be rooted in a good place. Now, can it be rooted in a bad place? Yeah, it can.
Did you as well speak about not just where it's rooted from, but what you can do with it? Have you spoken about that?
Yeah, what you can do with it, and having an understanding of what happens when a person has a shiras and how they're able to channel that we did. And it's so important because, there's, and I think a lot of it comes from, just Western culture, what is the marketing message which is being given over, money equals this, that we've adapted some sort of type of association of having a lot of money means a person's gone off the deep end, and basically dropped all of his ruchnius, and this is such an important thing. So I know it's something that you've taught me and teaching all the time. But once let's say a person has this desire, right, what I told the Chevra is that it could be rooted in something in ruchnius. I believe I mentioned, even though we didn't have a chance to go into it, that's what we're going to do here today. I mentioned we have a teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, where we find that it can actually be connected to nitzotzos, it could be connected to holy sparks, it could be connected to a person's tikkun. So what I wanted to do here today, together and really under your guidance, is to take a look at these mar makomos, that's like we do here in the Chabura, to be able to see things inside, and B'ezus Hashem to be able to understand together, how does this work, what mechanism is taking place, and more importantly, how does a person like myself, at least, use this Torah in a practical way that we're able to really know, like, is this coming from a good place and is this coming from a bad place? So let's jump inside. We'll jump inside, and then B'ezus Hashem, through going through the Mar Makomos together, we'll be able to see how it unfolds. So we have over here, and you have in front of you the Mar Makomos. The first Mar Makom we have from the Keser Shem Tov in Kuf Tzadik Daled. It's a piece of it. It's a long piece. But what we brought down over here is the Baal Shem Tov is explaining a pasuk in Tehillim which is found in Kuf Zayin, where the pasuk in Tehillim says Re'evim gam tzmeim nafshem behem tisataf, right? Which the literal translation, right? The literal translation of this pasuk is that they were hungry and they were thirsty, and their soul was quenching, felt tired, felt exhausted, was seeking something. So the Baal Shem Tov here says, and Rabbi, you let me know if there's a lot of deep concepts here. If you want to obviously chime in and fill in what I'm missing, please do. So we have over here. I know chime in is a big word for us here in VWI. Okay. So Perish Khan Soid Gadol.
Is everyone chaps the Tehillim? Say the Tehillim again, maybe. Sure.
So the pasuk in Tehillim is Reivim Gam Tzmeim Nafshem Bahem Tesatav, which the basic pshat would assume that the person who's feeling exhausted, the person who's quenching, is that person who is hungry and thirsty, right? Because I know when I get hungry and thirsty, I feel a bit tired, right? So that's the pasuk. What's on pshat level, what's taking place here with David HaMelech. So the Baal Shem Tov says, Perish bekan soid gadol. V'hu, here we have inside of this a very big secret, a very big foundation. Right? So why is it that Hashem created the world this way? Right? We're so used to it. Ever since we've been little children, we wake up, hungry, eat, drink. This is what happens. That's what I do. I think that's what most people here do, right? Eat, drink. Why is it Hashem created the world in such a way? So the Baal Shem Tov reveals, and there's so much here, we'll have to maybe come back to this a different time, because there's so much here, I know, that the reason why Hashem created the world in such a way that there's food and drink, that a person, sha'adam ta'av lahem, that a person has a desire to be able to eat and to drink, atam, shehem, that we have nitzotzos, right? We have nitzotzos, right, from Adam Arishain, right? We have nitzotzos, we have holy sparks. So we discussed, and in the Chabur, it's been a while, but we did once address this topic, bechlal of nitzotzos. It was back earlier on when we were speaking about the idea, another teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, about how when it comes to work, what's driving us to be involved. So we opened up the topic and we did an introduction, for those of you who were with us then, right, of understanding this, what are nitzotzos, how does it work, that we went through. So here the Baal Shem Tov is referencing it, and what he's saying is that these holy sparks, the mislabesh, right, in the different aspects of creation, right, we have daimim, we have tzomeach, we have chai, we have medaber, right, we have inanimate objects, right, we have those things that are growing, we have live things, right, animals, right, that have a chiyus to them, and then we have medaber and adam. V'yesh lahem in what's lahem? In these nitzotzos themselves, right, these holy sparks that exist in all of creation, yesh lahem cheshech lidave piktusha. They themselves have a chiyus, they have a vitality that are seeking to connect to holiness, to kedusha. V'heim me'oirin, is that me'yayin nukvin? Yayin nukvin? Maim? Okay, I thought that was a mistake. Right? Nukvin v'sod ein tipa yoreda milamala she'ein tipim oilim kenegda. So here with the Baal Shem Tov, this is referencing a concept, right? This is a concept, a discussion within itself, that we find this idea, right? The Chazal say that when rain falls, right, when rain falls from Shemayim, that there's a keneged, right, a parallel to it.
Condensation, like a condensation.
Right, which is rising up, which is its zivug, right, which is meant for it. So, with the concept over here that Baal Shem Tov is explaining, right, is that we have that things come from above and things come from below, and there's always a yichud, there's always a unification which is taking place, and therefore, what he's saying over here, right, v'chol achila v'shtia she'adam oichel v'shosa hi mamish chelech nitzotzos shelo shu tzarech letaken. So when we're eating and when we're drinking, right, you're having your bagel, you're having your muffin, you're having your breakfast, maybe you're eating it right now, your donut, if you're in America, your donut, okay? So when you're eating that food, what's taking place in a spiritual reality is that there are these holy sparks inside of this food, which are connected, right, connected to this person's neshama, to this person's soul, which need to have a tikkun, they need to be rectified. So this is what the Baal Shem Tov says, V'zeh ma shekosav re'evim gam tzmeim, k'shadam ra'ai v'tzamei lehem, when you have a person, myself, I'm hungry, right, thirsty, lama zeh, why is it the person's hungry and thirsty? So he says, Zeh ma shekosav nafshem behem tisatav, because the nefesh, right, the soul, the aspect of the spirituality which is in the food itself is quenching. It has a desire. It has this desire to be connected to Kedusha. It has the desire to be connected with its source. And therefore, what's taking place, this is what the Baal Shem Tov says over here, which is to paraphrase, is that what's taking place when we're eating, right? I think I just like pizza and coffee. I like pizza and coffee. So, if I think that's what's taking place right now, right, it's just I like pizza and coffee, the Baal Shem Tov says what's really taking place is that you have this reality of the fact that the nitzotzos, the holy sparks that are inside the pizza and the coffee, are desiring for a connection, and that's creating this sort of type of pull within each one of us to be able to get there.
And we've got that which came down, Chet Adam. There was a shattering of the vessels, it all fell. Everything fell. And now everything is waiting to go back up.
Yeah.
It's all waiting to go back up, to be reconstructed. How that happens is exactly what we're being told here. Everything is levels of clothing. Levushim on levushim on levushim. Yeah.
Right. So what we're going to do is just I want to ask the question.
The last part. You prepared that.
Okay.
Sure. Leave it.
I think we'll leave it just because we want to be able to get to the Ber Maim Chaim, and I want to be able to ask the question.
Okay.
So right. So what Rabbi you've just shared, right, is that you have this idea of the levushim. You have the idea of the levushim, and therefore everything which is taking place in reality, right, while we may be interacting, and this is the way most people interact and don't actually think about things, what's really taking place is this spiritual connection. Now, how does this drive our desires towards food, and how this drives our desires towards Gashmias? So here, I wanted us to be able to take a look at this Ber Maim Chaim, which is explained in the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov. Right? Many of the tzaddikim, the Talmidim, explain the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, but I felt that by this Ber Maim Chaim, he really, really brings it down, and I think really poses the question that we started off with here in the Chabura, which is, how do you know what's actually driving you? So let's take a look over here at the Ber Maim Chaim. Right, we'll go through it quickly. V'hinei noida hamavur, right? There's a Ber Maim Chaim found in Vayikra, in Chavav, right? In Chavav, I believe it's Parshas Bechukosai. V'hinei noida hamavur b'shem Arba Lokia Baal Shem Tov b'ferish HaKasuv. So it's known, this parish of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh, right? Commenting on Tehillim, Reivim Gam Tzmeim Nafshem Behem Tisatav. So he explains, Vihu ki adam adavuk bo yisparach. Then when you have a person, it's going to be medayik here. When you have a person who's davuk to Hashem bebechina mavor lamayla, like we explained above, which is, once again, we're coming in the middle of a piece of Ber Maim Chaim, but he's going to explain it below as well. Hine kol cheftzei ha'olam hazeh shayachim elav. It's fascinating. Every aspect of creation, right? Every aspect of creation, all of Gashmias, that has a connection to him, shayachim alav, that has a deep connection to him, b'ma'oid, right? B'ma'oid, v'roitzim l'skarev elav v'chol oiz. That these pieces of gashmias, these pieces of materialism, have a strong desire to connect him. Kidei, why? Because he wants to be able to complete this process of creating this yichud between that which is in it, which is in that piece of food, which is in that shirt, right, which was in that car, and which is within that person. As if, I don't know if they could have ever understood it as well as we can understand. We have, GPS and today and all of these ideas of somehow finding its source and getting connected. So this is what is the Baal Shem Tov, right? If we can take a mashal for ourselves, is explaining over here. So, as we've explained this in many places, but we're not going to explain this now. However, so after lezeh, so he explains a beautiful pshat here about Yaakov Avinu. After lezeh, Amar Yaakov Avinu, v'nasan li lechem lechol. When Yaakov Avinu said to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem, please to give me lechem lechol, I should have bread to eat. Koloimar, what did that mean? Hashem Yisbarach yazor li shi'ei al-bechina azu. That Hashem help me that I should be on the Bechina, that I should come to a place, I should perfect myself to a place, that I shouldn't have to go to the supermarket and find the food, right? I just shouldn't have to search after my food, but rather, that the lechem itself, right, the food itself is going to come after me, right? The parnasa is going to come after us. Why? Because the parnasa and that which is within that parnasa, but that which in the food Yaakov Avinu is speaking about, also the clothes Yaakov Avinu is speaking about, the nitzotas want to become close to me because they want to be part of this tikkun. So here's the ikar part. That what can happen sometimes? Ish kazeh, they have a person like this. Yavar b'derech o b'beis. So sometimes he's passing by in the streets. He's passing by in the marketplace. He's passing by in the mall. Or Bebeso is in his house, the famine, but you're the fun of Mechetze Oidam Hazeh. He sees a shirt, right? He sees a cabinet, he sees a table, he sees chairs, and he has chairs. He has a table perhaps, right? Or he sees food. He says, V'libo ein shum taiva v'chemda lahem ki libo chalon v'kirbo. Now, it's not as taiva, this is, we're going to speak about it. It's not as taiva which is drawing him towards it, because we're talking about a person, ish kadosh chazeh, that it's not that his taiva is what's drawing him to this item. Ach avor sheshmo yisparchu oisem mishpat la'ashukim ahema neshamos minitzutze chedusha neshakim mechol chavtze oilam hazeh v'chafitzim la'alos misham li'adabek b'shmo yisparach. But rather, what's taking place is that this person is somehow connecting. Right, how this looks like it'll help us understand, but this person is somehow connecting to the fact that within this suit, right, within this car, right, within this piece of food, within this table, that there are these sparks of kedusha. What he says, the lashon to translate, is he says you have these neshamas, you have souls, and nitzotzas of kedusha and holy sparks that are stuck. Now, shakim, they're in jail, right? They're in jail. The lashon of they're being in jail. They're stuck inside this chefte oilam hazeh, v'chafitzim la'alos, and they want to get out. It's like, you can imagine they're standing there by the prison cell. Help me, let me out. And there's this guy walking around. We like to do pidyon shvuyim, right? So we want to help. The Yid loves to help. So what happens? HaKadosh Baruch Hu moitzi asirim b'choshva shemotzi asirim ma'ela ayidei kashras ha'adam lezeh. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? Hashem wants to help. Hashem is moitzi asirim. Hashem takes prisoners out, and Hashem wants to be able to help. And therefore, hu ayidei hashliach shesholech lo. So Hashem sends us on a shlichus. Hashem sends a person on a shlichus. That is how. How does Hashem send the shlichus? He sends him a chayfet to ratzon lisaves the davar hazeh, that this person will have a ratzon for such a thing. And this person, right, this tzaddik, he understands within himself, why am I somehow wanting, to go to, Miami? Like, where did this come from? Where is this lush, like that? I'm somehow interested in that house. Somehow interested in that car. Where is this coming from? Where is this coming from? So he says, Ki im b'shvil shezeh shayach alav, because he knows that that inside of this physicality, in this materialism, there is a nitzot which is connected to him. That it will be able, through connecting to it, through buying it, through wearing it, through eating it, through going there, will be able to create this yichud, to uplift the ruchnius which is inside of this object. And a person does this from a deep place inside of his heart. By doing that, what takes place, he didn't just get a nice shirt. Right? What happens is he raises himself, and he raises up the ruchnius, the misha amar v'haya olam the nachas ruach, the fun of yisparch bezeh, that it brings a nachas ruach. It brings a nachas ruach zakadosh baruch hu. We'll just end with this. V'zeh sha'omus, the Rebbe Chaim says, this is the pshat. Re'evim gam tzmeim. What does it mean? They're hungry and thirsty. Perish mashat tzaddik hazeh, that this tzaddik, this person who re'ev lelechem, he's hungry for lechem. Utzam alamayim, he's thirsty for water. Ve'emes ein b'li b'chem das davar hazeh klal, that really inside of his own taiva, he doesn't have a chevetz ratzon for that. Zehu rak machma shenafsham behem tesatav, because, as we saw from the Baal Shem, the ruchnius, the souls inside of this, of Gashmius, perish in nefashos ha'ashukim ha'ele chafitzim tesatef behem, right, that these, right, tesatef, right, lashon of wrapping, right, tesatef, we have ayef, of being exhausted, and we have a lashon of ituf, of wrapping, and these spirituality inside of the Gashmius, Chafitzim, the Satevem, wants to connect to him, B'chtei Shi'alu Imo, so will be able to raise itself up together with this person. And therefore, this type of a person, when he's involved in his Gashmis, when he's involved in his desires, he is creating a tikkun, a rectification for those things. Mind blowing. It's empowering. It's like having a cold drink of water on a hot day, but it's mind-blowing.
It's beautiful.
But it's also confusing. Here's my questions. You know, you can read this Ber Maim Chaim, and I've read this Ber Maim Chaim, and you can be like, yeah, now it's okay. Why? You know, I like, getting pizza every single Thursday night, and I don't want to go to that restaurant, I want to get, that restaurant. And it would seem from here that there's a reality, that there's a spiritual manifestation taking place within a person's desires, and l'inyanenu, specifically what we're talking about here today, which is that when you meet a person and be'emes you discuss with him, and he has a ratzon for wealth, haroitze yitasher, he wants to become wealthy. He doesn't just want to have enough. He wants to be wealthy. He wants to be able to live a type of lifestyle. To say that's coming from ruchnius. That's coming from ruchnius, and therefore our pursuit when we're involved in it, we shouldn't feel guilty. We shouldn't feel bad. Right? We shouldn't feel like we're gone off the derech. We're not just okay. This is tikkun. At the same time, if you look at the words closely, the Rebbe Chaim, tzaddik, he's speaking about a person who's, he doesn't have any typhus at all. So how do we understand? I mean, Rabbi, how do you understand when you're teaching this Torah, when you're understanding this Torah for people like ourselves? Like, is this a relevant Torah for us? Or is this just something which, the Baal Shem Tov is discussing with his inner circle, and like we're just fooling ourselves if we think, it would seem not, because we find Chazal speaking about the idea, so of a person wanting wealth. All right, now it's going to be a good Talmud. How did I read it? It was okay?
Very good boy.
Okay.
Very good boy. Okay. I'm not going to tell you what I think, I'll tell you what my teachers told me. That first of all, as a klal, when we're speaking about the inyan of tzaddik within the Sfarim, you see it by the Sfad Shemakubalim, you see it by the Abu Katzera, the Ben Ish Chai, you see it within the Chassidish Sfarim, you see it within the Litvish Sfarim. So just take the texts in front of us. When the Baal Shem Tov is speaking about it, and when the Ber Maim Chaim is speaking about this Nakuda of the tzaddik, it's being mechazak us. We are the tzaddik. You and I are the tzaddik. And because, as we know from Tanya and many other places, we're never in one state. We've got the tzaddik v'tovlo, tzaddik v'raloi, beinoni, rasha what?
V'tovlo?
And rasha v'ralo. So are we just stuck in one position? So the Messiah is, we're oscillating between these different 5 steps. So there's times during the day when I'm the Rasha Varala, Rasha V'Tovla, the Tzaddik V'Tovla. We're oscillating all the time between these steps. This is found in the Birurim of the Tzemach Tzedek and other places as well. But then you just open up that Torah, is that everyone has a tzaddik. If you look in Likutei Halachos, everyone has that tzaddik within. Even where in Sichas Aran, Rabbi Nachman praises himself, self-praise. Mamash, at the end of Sichas Aran, there's no tzaddik like me, I'm the greatest tzaddik. And even if I wasn't the great-grandchild of the Heilige Baal Shem Tov, I'd still be great. But people forget the next part of the sentence when Rabbi Nosson is asking what's pshat. He says, because if I can do it, you can do it. Don't think the greatness is based on my yichus. If I can do it, you can do it. You could become the tzaddik. So starting with a klal, and this I heard from Rabbi Yosef Meir Weingot, who was a Talmud of Rav Avram Sternhartz, a lot of tzaddikim, that when we're speaking about a terminology in the text tzaddik, very rarely is it speaking about this tzaddik. Speaking about each and every one of us. That the tzaddikim believe in the tzaddik in us.
Oh.
The tzaddik in us. Now we have to believe in the tzaddik in us. This is a very important nekuda as well. Maybe we'll go into it, but the fact is, Yaakov, this Bermaim Chaim is mamash gevaldik. Yaakov saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, do me a favor. I want to connect to you. I want to be Isaac and Avodah of Chesed. Again, from one thing I want to iterate here, which is very, very important, is you'll hear people say, the Ikar Avodah is Emunah, the Ikar Avodah is the Vekus, the Ikar Avodah is this, Bitachon, whatever it may be. The Ikar Avodah is being of service. We're here to be of service. And to be of service, to be that Eved of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the world being of service, we need the Vekas, we need Emunah, we need Bitachon, we need Hishtadlus, we need Bittul, but the Ikka is to be of service. So Yaakov is saying, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I purely want to be of service without running after the Gashmias. So let the Gashmias run after me. Now, how many people have we met? As well, for you, I'm sure you've met so many people like this, that they mamash have everything in front of them, but the only one that gets in the way is who? Themselves. Nachon? They have everything in front of them. So you can ask for a bracha and HaKadosh Baruch Hu will say to you, yeah, I'll give it to you. But do you believe in it? What's the nakud of tzaddik? Tzaddik is that you've cleansed yourself, you've healed yourself. Tzaddik is that you've reached a certain state of, if I can use these terms, physical health, emotional health, mental health, that you yourself can get out the way and you could let the magic happen. But this nakuda is, I believe this is for each and every one of us, without any suffix. Maybe I had suffix for 2 seconds when I first heard it from my teachers, but after that I've got no suffix. It's for each and every one of us. And it's happening. By nature it's happening. Because again, which we're not going into now, this is not a share on how Bir Nitzaisis Kedusha works, but what I learned from my teachers is Bir Nitzaisis Kedusha happening all the time. The very simple fact that the world is spinning on its axis, there's a day and night, the very simple fact that we're here right now and we're moving and we're partaking in life is a Bir Nitzaisis Kedusha. The quality is what is the depth, the excavation, the bringing together, and the liberation, sending up these Nitzaisis Kedusha. The quality is dependent on how in tune we are. So for example, if I'm living a life where it's a life of kavanah, if I'm living a life and mamash, I'm engaged, and I chap how important that I'm important, I matter, I take up space in this world, I'm important, I have here an avodah, and I'm mechaven, I'm present in the moment, I'm mechaven, and I chap pshat. Look at this, everything, the food I'm eating, the piece of paper. Like you chap pshat, you gave us all a piece of paper, but the exact piece of paper that has Nitzaisis Kedusha, same ink, like if you put, looks the same. Nachon? Identical, nachon? But the reality is, as the Sfarim, the Ben Ish Chai brings this and others, that the exact ink for me in the process of the ink thingy-majiggy, what's it called? What's the printer, the ink?
In cartridge.
So in cartridge, the exact ink in that card, when it came and printed on here with this exact piece of paper, is mamash for me. So as I'm here with the shtender, with the chair, with the clothes that I'm wearing, there's an aliyas nitzaisis kedusha. So hopefully the more present I am, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want to metaken your world, so I'm engaged. So with everything that's going on, the more conscious, hopefully now we're more conscious about this. So right now, in this moment in time, in this moment in my life, hopefully there was just a deeper excavation. We went deeper, we gathered together more, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, fly up, nitzaises, go back up, go to your source. So we've just now been involved in an avodah where we're taking and letting these nitzaises kedusha, freeing them up, which is hastening the geula, reconstructing the damage that was done that we're happy about. The reconstructing the damage that was done by Chet Adam, the Chet Adam Bubu experience. So each and every one of us, you and I, you are the tzaddik, I'm the tzaddik, you're the tzaddik, we're all the tzaddik, the ladies, the gentlemen, the children, we're all the tzaddik, the babis, the zaydas, we're all the tzaddik, all the human beings, we are the tzaddikim. And the development of our consciousness, the development of our presence, the kavanah that we have as we interact with anything and everything that we are doing is the level in which we are excavating. We're freeing the Nitzaisis Kedusha from the prisons. They're binding to us and hopefully setting up to the right place, helping HaKadosh Baruch Hu, being partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Geula process.
I see. So what I'm understanding what Rabbi is sharing is that when we find over here that the Ber Maim Chaim is saying that you have a person, Shimon, right, and Shimon's basically walking by, in the street, is walking by in the marketplace, right, and suddenly has a desire for a certain object, and he's saying that this person, Shimon, right, who's the tzaddik, that he's able to be involved in this process of raising up the nitzotzos because of the fact that he's a tzaddik. What I'm understanding what Rabbi is saying is that each person, myself, yourself, that we're constantly oscillating between different stages of consciousness. And what that means is that the same person that might be on a specific day, right, because of the state of consciousness that he's in, when he's walking by, the marketplace, and there's a shawarma being sold, because of he's not so present and he may be stuck in his thinking, he might be in, whatever is going on for him that particular day, he might not be in that place of what we're calling the tzaddik, and therefore when he's like, I have to buy that shawarma, he may not be this person that the Ber Maim Chaim is speaking about. However, that same person, Shimon, right, and for each one of us on a different day. So
yes, there is still a birur going on, but far less in quality now.
Right.
But Shimon on the other day.
Right. There is still always something which is taking place, but with Shimon on another day, where he's speaking about over here, and he's calling that person that tzaddik, that he's able to say, okay, the reason why he's eating that shawarma right now is, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is that the Shimon on another day, who's in it. And for each one of us on a different day, the more that Rabbi is saying, the more that we work on ourselves on becoming healthier beings, right? Where we're not eating because of anxiety, we're not eating because of emotional comfort, but we become more aware of ourselves. We become healthier human beings that we can be in a place that the same Shimon, right, the same person on a different day, right, where we're able to come more into contact with this greater level of consciousness and realize, wait, if I'm being drawn towards this, I'm being drawn towards that, I'm tapping into something deeper over here. So it's not like you are the tzaddik or you're not, this Torah is irrelevant for me because, it's only for, Rabbi Nachman, it's only for the Gedolei Hador, it's for the Baal Shem Tov. It's nothing to do with me. Whenever I have my, my desires for something, it's coming from a bad place. This Torah is coming to me mechazek. This is what Rabbi was saying. That tzaddikim want to be mechazek us, that yes, us too have the ability to be able to live this way.
I want to add as well, I don't know if are you going to ask about how you yourself can have some sort of idea of where you're holding?
Well, yeah. That was definitely going to go there because what I was thinking was like, especially, I know is a big topic. It's more than within the topic of wealth. So here that specifically they're talking here about eating. But I guess my question was, is like when you have this person who's making this decision of what career to take, or what financial lifestyle he's going after. Let's just say that, because we know that career doesn't necessarily mean having more money. But when a person is making that decision, right, and he has inside of him this sort of type of desire to have more, I was thinking while you were speaking that even if he may not be in this higher level of consciousness all the time, if for that period of time when he's making that decision, right, he gets himself to a clearer space of thinking, right? So then when he's making that decision, that he could know if that's coming from that place, even if he's not in that place all the time, meaning on a regular day he's not in that place. But the question is that when you made that decision, right? I know, here in Pilzno we're always emphasize the importance of mentorship and discussing with the Rabbi, maybe you'll speak about that as well. But it would seem like it's enough for a person to get to a place of tzaddik within themselves at a certain point, so that therefore he can have that point of clarity of what type of lifestyle is he really looking for, to know it's coming from a good place, even if he's not in that state all the time. Is that...
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was just wondering. But then the next question that comes along is, how do we know that? How do we know that? How do we judge within ourselves?
I wanted to add something which I think is very, very, very important, because sometimes, we've got this funny idea, especially, I think people have associated the Baal Shem Tov with this idea, and I think anybody that really takes the Baal Shem Tov seriously will notice this. But so many people, when we speak about the Baal Shem Tov, specifically the Baal Shem Tov, what did the Baal Shem Tov, what did he bring? What was he mechadesh? So many people, someone sent me this message, and with love and respect, it's ignorance. So what happens? They said, the Baal Shem Tov, he was mechadesh that we can have that extra piece of cake. That was his words. Like, he was mechadesh, the Baal Shem Tov said, whereas the previous tzaddikim, they don't have that extra piece of cake. Hold back. Don't do things that you enjoy. Hold back. Be poor. Be poverty-stricken. So the Baal Shem Tov came and said, no, be involved in the world and have that extra piece of cake, and etc., etc. So I would like to say that this is a context-based Torah. And to answer the next shlav of what you've asked, I think this really needs to be understood. And that is, the Baal Shem Tov, it's true to say, the Baal Shem Tov did open up a form of avodah which was giving us a greater reshus to involve ourselves in the levushim, in the gashmias. This is true. So for example, in context, sheba context, yes, there is room, have that extra carrot, if you're not having the cake, but have that extra cake, that little bit of chocolate. There is room to say that. Have that, extra piece of clothing, whatever it may be. But as well, you could never ever forget in the Tzavas Rivash and many other places, Talmidei Baal Shem Tov. If you look, for example, take for example Setel Katan, take for example the work of, I don't know, one other work, Yosha Divrei Emes, they're very harsh. Fasting. Do fast. Make sure you fast. Don't have that extra piece of cake. When you're going to sit in front of that cake and you don't have that cake, it's praiseworthy. So it's not fair to say, and I've heard people say this time and time again, it's not fair to say indulgence is what the Baal Shem Tov came to bring to the world. This is sheker. This is not true. Because anybody, and Reb Simcha, we've spoken about this many a time, the moment that you indulge, you actually lose sense of self. You lose sense. Your das is enveloped by the nefesh, by the lower self, and the lower self takes over, and forget about it, there's no one home. You now don't know where that stimulus is coming from. Is that stimulus for that particular something coming from a healthy place, or is it not coming from a healthy place? So we're not talking about indulging. And we never, ever, ever, within anything we say, speak about unhealthy indulgence. Never. Because the more a person indulges, the more a person's going into something, and more and more and more, they become switched off more and more and more.
I mean, the more that they fall into indulgence, the less they have the ability to even
Discern.
know.
Correct.
Okay. To
Correct.
know really where it's coming from.
Correct. So sometimes when you become, like for example, you speak about food. In the Arba Yesodot we have food. What's one of the principles of health. So when you speak about food, when I give shiurim and we speak about food and I tell people, do you know that there are 6 to 7 experiences of hunger? What? 6 to 7 experiences of hunger? What are you going on about? Yeah, there could be hunger from stress, there could be religious eating, or I would say 6 forms of eating, 6 different associations to eating. There could be emotional eating and religious-based eating and nutrition eating, the different forms of eating. So how do you know? How do you know where you are within that process? You know because you learn to become self-aware. You become self-aware. So for example, if a person has overindulged, really hold back. Really hold back. Spend time intermittent fasting. Spend time not buying that particular something that you want. Notice how it feels. So the more we can have that self-awareness, the more I can hold back. Say, for example, I'm used to just buying, but no, actually, I have a desire to buy. I'm going to hold back from that desire to buy. Let me see how I feel. Let me see what that does to me inside. What does that do? What does that do to my thinking? What does that do to my emotions? What does that do to my physiology? So when we can get to know ourselves, and when we can really be with it, then I become sensitive. You know what? I'm going to weigh this out. Am I going to get this new computer? Let's see. Do I have the money for it? Yeah, I've got the money for it. It's not like I don't have the money for it. I've got the money for it. I'm going to wait a week. Let's see what goes on inside. And for example, your hirhurim, your machshavas will guide you. Your machshavas, as a famous mamash, I think it's Sichas Aran Zayin, where Rabbi Nachman speaks about Rabbi Nachman Horodonka, and this nakuda of how our hirhurim, he was about to eat from somebody and he didn't know if to eat or not, and he had like a hirhur machshava, and the machshava guided him whether to eat or not. Because he had one thought and the thought told him one thing, and then Reb Nachman Horodonka had another thought and the second thought answered the first thought, and he knew to go weiter. Wow. It was something that he sensed inside. It was something that, okay. So, for example, we're not saying don't get that car. We're not saying not to get that computer, not to involve yourself in wealth, in finance, in whatever it may be. And as well, it's a sensitivity in where you are in the process in order to ascertain how I relate to it. Can I add another nakuda? So I would say like this. How do you know if you've bought something and it was l'shem shamayim or not on a certain respect? How do you know? What's a good simon? So I'll tell you something very interesting. See if I can get this right. Haven't given this over in some time. See if I can get this right. If you buy something, ask yourself, have you ever bought something and 5 minutes after buying it, enjoyed it for 5 minutes and it's gone. You buy something, buy a car, you buy something, it's gone, 5 minutes. Have it for a few months. We see this a lot of the times. You understand the experience I'm trying to share? You buy something, and then you've bought it, you're excited with it. You're excited to, a computer, this or that or the other. Mamash, for a few minutes and it's gone. A day, a month, that excitement. So that's buying, and you're in a state of nefesh. You buy something, and then for a certain amount of time you're excited by it, and then it fades away, and you don't even notice it anymore. It's buying from a state of nefesh. When you buy from a state of das, if you say to yourself, you know what, I don't even need this. I want this, I don't need it. Take a breath, I don't need it. I really don't. And maybe even hold off by buying or purchasing that particular something. Hold off. And I'm okay without it. I'm really, really okay without it. And be okay without it. And then when you buy it and you have a karasotov, I'm okay without it and I'm going to choose to buy this. I'm going to choose to buy this. I'm going to buy it. I'm going to be in relationship with this as I buy it. So then what happens is you relate to it very, very different thereafter. You relate to it very differently. You're not buying just because of like, I'm going to buy, I want it, I buy. No, you think it out and you realize I don't need anything. Everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives me is mamash matana. I don't need it. And you buy it from a place of not needing it. You're buying it from a place of not necessarily wanting. You still want it, but I don't need it. I'm buying it because I could buy it and it fits, it's good, it works, and I'm going to enjoy it. So you have a different relationship to that particular thing that you buy. So when you have this, I call it what's the syndrome that we call it? When I have this, I'll be happy. You remember the syndrome? So what happens? When I have more money, I'll be happier. When I have this new car, I'll be happier. When I'm in this good relationship, I'll be more fulfilled. When I learn more Dapim Gemara, I'll be more fulfilled. When I daven with more Kavan, I'll feel closer to Hashem. When I do that, we even do it Al Pi Ruchnius. When it will be better. When I will be happier. Everything is good right now in the present moment. And when you, from the present moment, recognize, Ich bin Shalem, I'm whole now. Ani Shalem Akshav, I'm whole. I have everything. I'm in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Mamash. And everything is an opportunity. Every time I get to daven, it's an opportunity. Every single time I get to learn, it's an opportunity. All the gashmis I have, it's an opportunity. So when I'm functioning from that place and I'm even purchasing something from that place, and it's not, when I have this car, I'll be happier. No, I'm happy now. And what will the car do? Add and support my happiness. It will add and support my happiness. It's not going to make me happy. Because we sometimes buy something, we sometimes purchase something, because we think, if I only have that, everything will be okay. But that's sheker. Everything is okay now. And it's even the same with relationships. This MS is the same with relationships. In relationships, I'm not in a relationship because you make me happy, you support my happiness. If we're getting married and I'm getting married to you because you're going to make me happy, this is sheker. But we're in friendship because you support my happiness. We support each other. I should be shalem now. So when you purchase something, when you become sensitive, and you purchase something, not because it's going to make me happy, but because it's going to support my happiness, not because it's going to make me fulfilled, but it will support me being fulfilled, it's a very different experience. Report back, let me hear from you.
Yeah, so it sounds that like it's like you have we have apps today and all these things. You're able to track a person's pulse and track person's steps, and to be able to see what the weather is. It's kind of like some sort of type of a internal device system of being able to know within ourselves, is a ratzon that we're having, a desire that we're having, where is it coming from? Is it coming from a lower place? Which once again, we're always oscillating, and that's okay. There's room for it, and that's but that's fine. We're human beings, and we're always oscillating. But right now, in a given moment where I'm making a decision, where I'm standing there in the furniture shop with my spouse, and we're like, okay, what are we going to get? Or we're trying to plan out where we may go on vacation, or we're trying to plan out our future and saying, okay, what do we want our financial lifestyle to look like, right? One way to be able to identify, and assess those thoughts that are coming in, is it coming from a lower place of ourself or coming from a higher place of self, is that listen closely to the language.
And what would be the experience of lower place?
So it sounds like the experience of lower place is more of a language of, I need this for my happiness.
Yes.
Things aren't good. I need this for my happiness. Yes. It's a dependency, and it's an unhealthy dependency on it. And when you hear that, once again, we all experience them, but that is like a red light going off, letting us know that right now that thought is coming from a lower part of ourself. But if the language or the thought that's coming through, right, the emotions that we're experiencing is not coming from a place of dependency, where the thoughts are, things are good, but it's interesting. I would like to have that. It's interesting. Like, I would like to go to that place. It's interesting that, I just have this thing inside of me that I'd like to live in a bigger house. I would love to be able to have more money, to be able to do this and do that. I don't feel dependent on it, but it's interesting that I have this desire. That is like, a green light going off saying, this is coming from more of that place of the higher state of consciousness, more of that state of what we're seeing over here being described perhaps as the tzaddik, when a person's more clean, more from a place of being clean, of saying, this is coming from a higher intention. So that's what I heard. That's what I heard as a tool for us to be able to...
I'll add another nakuda. And again, it needs to be understood in context. So what we've said is that if I am present, I'm present, and I can assess, okay, you mentioned the shawarma, So I either can be like, I need the shawarma, I'm everything is like, I'm starving, so there's lacking in my life, I need that shawarma from the place in Jerusalem, I'm talking about when we leave Yerushalayim, that shop, so need, good shawarma there, okay? So what happens is, the whole chevra starving, so we can buy the shawarma from a place where I'm going to have that shawarma and it's going to make me happy. I have to have that shawarma to make me happy. Or even in that moment, if we could remind each other, okay, yes, you are lacking, but take a moment and say, I'm going to buy the shawarma because, yes, I'm hungry. My nefesh wants it. My nefesh thirsts for it. And the shawarma thirsts for me. The shawarma's thirsting for me. But I'm going to buy, I'm going to get the shawarma from a place of das. using the shawarma moshel. But this nakuda of having the maturity to assess, okay, really, you know what? I've eaten today. It's true, I've eaten today. I don't actually have to eat. I'm hungry, so, okay. I know body health. I can go, as long as I'm drinking, I've got my bottle of water. I really don't need to buy the shawarma. That's one darga. One darga, which is a more extreme darga, is I'm really, I've eaten today. I don't need to eat for the next few days, if so. I've got my water. So the next darga is, okay, I'm here, I'm present, and I'm going to, I don't need it, everything is okay, but I'm going to choose to eat it. I'm with friends, I'm hungry, I'm going to choose to eat it. And another darga is, depending on where you are, the darga of saying that, look at that, okay, I'm hungry, I'm with friends, I'm comfortable in at least intellectually, my body isn't, I'm going to give to my body, but I'm going to eat it, and the shawarma's calling me. This shawarma's calling me, I'm going to make a choice to eat it. And when you can just manage your states of consciousness, then the way that you manifest life is completely different. When you can manage your different states and be aware, it's like, I will only be happy when, I'll only be fulfilled when. No, Baruch Shem, everything's okay right now. You end up, the pleasure that you experience from purchasing something remains for far longer, if not forever. And the eineg, you enjoy it a lot more. You enjoy it. So this actually what we're saying when HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the beginning of the Eitz Chaim and Mr. Tisharim brings this, it's not the only reason why HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world. See, we should know this. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu on one level created the world because of eineg. So this is actually a way to 10x our pleasure in this world, to 10x our eineg. Know where something is coming from inside to buy something. So if you buy it from the right place, the eineg is far longer lasting and it's far more intense. It's an amazing thing, far more intense. In our house, my father was always makbid. We never were told you can't have. Very rarely we were told you can't have something. My father says, yeah, but work for it. Work for it. Work for it. And everybody knows if you really work for something, you enjoy it more. You enjoy it more. So actually, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this Torah is telling us, understood again in context. The Baal Shem Tov is telling us, understood in context, that Tachlis, this is a way that you can actually improve Oneg in your life. Can I add one more Nakuda? Where are we with timing?
The Rabbi.
One more Nakuda. Whereas once upon a time, in order, and again, this has to be understood because it's a whole Torah within itself. Whereas once upon a time, in order to really achieve ruchnius, we had to break away from the gashmias. We're now moving to a shlav in reality that really to achieve ruchnius, there's actually a nakuda, there's a bechina of very much including the gashmias, where that wasn't really as it is now. That's to do with, again, Nitzaisis Kedusha, because as we come to the end of time, which we've explained before, the year 6000, we have to pick up all the Nitzaisis Kedusha from every nook and cranny. Every little crack, there's Nitzaisis Kedusha that we have to pick up. So whereas once upon a time, I had to separate from the Gashmias, push away from the Gashmias. What the Baal Shem Tov is telling us, no, you have to chapshat as well, that in our door, and as we go forward, in order to have more ruchnius, we need to involve ourselves in the gashmias, which is as well a very, very deep idea, very much related to this. So the gashmias, if we allow it to happen, will find us. You know, the clothes we wear, the cars we drive, the houses we live in, and then the state in which we buy it, mamash, you'll enjoy getting into your car every single time. Because the car wasn't a fulfillment of a void in my nefesh. The car is aiding me in already being happy.
Right, and that's a totally different experience. So
these two last experiences that we just shared are shiurim within themselves, but at least just to hear it, to hear this Torah. Okay, I'm going to be quiet now. You know me, I've got a big mouth. I can go and go.
There's so much to say. And thank you so much for sharing those aspects and really adding that aspect to the element about how really depending on our consciousness it will actually impact our oneg. And what can happen is the person may be feeling like they need more because they're feeling empty.
Yes.
And it becomes a cycle because they keep on wanting from a lower place within themselves, and therefore the oneg doesn't last. So they think that they need more. Correct. Really, if they would be able to act from more of a higher state of consciousness, they would find themselves needing less, which is a topic within itself. It's tremendously fascinating, but it's amazing how HaKadosh Baruch Hu designed the world in a way that when we do things from a higher state of consciousness, we're able to enjoy them. But what you shared today was so important for us to hear when we, coming back to our initial question, which is we have either within ourselves or we know within other people that there is this ratzon for ashiras, and we find that the Chazal relate to it that there is such a thing. How do we know within ourselves? Is this coming from a healthy place, from a less healthy place, right? How do we able to see how aligned we are with what we've seen here described in the Baal Shem Tov? Ultimately, it's the meat and potatoes of Pilzno, which is das, consciousness, which is, like Rabbi says, we can only become a ben Torah when we're a ben Adam. And ben Adam means there was always an assumption that we're going to be human beings, which is that we're not animals and that we're able to get into a place of consciousness and a place of awareness, which is the kli, which is the vessel for all, for us to be able to say what's going on right now. So when I'm having that conversation with my spouse, when I'm having a conversation with a financial advisor, with a coach, when I'm trying to decide either if you're in an earlier stage of life, what type of financial lifestyle do I want to be living? Or if you've chosen something and then life changes and you have to decide, where do I want my next 10 years to look like, my next 20 years to look like? Is this coming just because that's what the neighbors are doing and I just feel like I need to have that nice car and that fancy house just so I'd be able to feel comfortable with them and not feel insecure?
Jealousy.
Right,
Nefesh.
Jealousy. Is it coming, because I'm starting to feel less satisfaction in my learning, less satisfaction in my relationships, and I've been bought into some marketing campaign that getting this is going to bring me the happiness in my life? Or is this coming from a place of really life is good, I appreciate that which I have, but I want this, and there's something calling to me. There's something calling to me, and like we're saying from the Baal Shem, to be opened up our eyes to understand that those callings and those desires that we have could be coming from tremendously deep places, and can be, like Rabbi said, especially towards the end of time where we're coming to, the avodah that we need to be doing, increasing ruchnius, bringing more nachas ruach to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The key is awareness, the key is das. We should all have the bracha. We should all have the bracha of being able to navigate this sugya, Bezos Hashem, to be able to have more,
together,
to be able to have satisfaction.
With each other, with our mentors. Yeah, have satisfaction.
Amen, amen, amen. Thank you very much, Rabbi. Thank you for